Hey everyone, this is Andy Melbuff, and in this video we're going to take a look at an extended look at how we can use the geometry component in Desmos activities to do some different things with students. Specifically, how we can have students create midpoints on line segments, and also how they can create parallel lines, perpendicular lines, and also how we can bisect angles. So let's go ahead and get started. One of the easiest tools to use in the geometry component is the midpoint tool to find a midpoint of a line segment. So I've got a blank screen here with only the title of the screen showing. So I want to come down here to my component list on the left, and I'm going to choose the geometry component. And this is called the canvas over here, and this is where things get created and transformed, etc. Here are the different tools available to me on the left. Now this canvas right here is as large as it can get because I have no other components on this screen. So if teachers were to add a note and maybe a math response, this canvas gets smaller and the tools get shifted to down below. So in the interest of keeping this as large as possible for viewing, I'm going to delete the two components I just added so we have this larger canvas. Now to create a midpoint, we first have to have a line segment. We can't use a line because that's never ending, but a line segment does have clear endpoints. So I choose this tool and I simply drop a point where I want my segment to start. I drop another point where I want it to end, and there's my line segment. Now I click back on select, so I'm out of the line segment tool, and with this segment I can click on it and add a label. And the label here shows the length of the segment. If I want to have a midpoint now, I'm going to go under More Tools. Here are some choices under More Tools available to me. I simply choose midpoint, and automatically it pops a midpoint on that line segment. And if I want students to see that this midpoint separates my line segment into two congruent parts, I can do that also with a little bit more work here. I can choose the line segment tool again and create a new line segment from my starting point to my midpoint, and from my midpoint to my other endpoint. Now those new line segments can also be clicked on and adding a label here of length. So I'm adding a label to both of these, and you can see here that both of the separated parts are 2.8, which is half of the 5.6. So students can manipulate this and see that wherever they move their line segment endpoint, and they can move either one. I'm trying to get 10, but I can't get exactly 10 there. It's pretty close. Anyway, students can see that the midpoint does separate this original line segment into two congruent segments. Moving on to our next screen, we're going to take a look at how students can create parallel lines. So what I want to do is select the line tool. I could also use line segment, but this time I'm going to use the line tool. And I drop a point where I want it to start and another point where I want it to end. And this is a never-ending line that goes through these 2 points. So then I can choose, under More Tools, the parallel line feature. Now we kind of get some directions here. We have to choose a line to set the slope. Well, this is the line that I want parallel, so it's going to indicate the slope. So I select that line, and then I choose another point to set the location for that line. So where you can see as I'm dragging here, I've created a parallel line. And actually I can create another parallel line. If I choose this slope and a new point, now I have 3 parallel lines. And these are, again, interactive for students. So students can drag any of these points. I can relocate my parallel lines if I wish, but any of the original points will adjust the slope of my parallel lines. On screen number 4, we can also do a similar type of thing and create perpendicular lines as opposed to parallel lines. Now I started out the parallel lines with the line segment. I can also do this, with the line tool. I can also do it with the line segment tool. So I'm going to do that this time. I'm going to choose a line segment. I'm going to drop a point where I want it to start, another point where I want it to end, and that line segment is ready to go. To create a perpendicular line, under More Tools, I choose Perpendicular Line. Again, I set the line, or I choose a line to set the slope, and I locate where I want my point to go. So here I have a perpendicular line created to my original one. And students can again manipulate this, and they can also move the location of this. Now if you want it right in the middle, if you want to create a perpendicular bisector, we can do that. We have to use the midpoint that we used a couple slides ago. So I'm going to add a midpoint here. I just click on the line segment, there's my midpoint, and students can move this to that midpoint, or you can just simply create a new perpendicular line at the midpoint. And again, all of this can be modified, manipulated by students by dragging. So that's how we can create perpendicular lines with the geometry component. The last concept we're going to look at in this video is how do we bisect an angle. That angle can be just simply the center or the middle angle in a couple of lines, or we can choose a polygon. I'm going to go ahead and choose the polygon feature. So I'm going to make a triangle here. I just drop points where I want that triangle to go, and then I close it up here. So there's my triangle, and this triangle can be manipulated. So let me go ahead and just drag this around a little bit. We're going to see if we can bisect this biggest angle, this obtuse angle down here. And maybe we want to label it for students. So I can click on that point, add a label, and I can make that a different color. So I might want to do that. So here's angle A, and I want to bisect angle A. We're going to use a compass tool to create an angle bisector. But first, for this compass tool to work, I have to set a radius. So I'm going to add an extra segment outside of this triangle. I'm going to put it over here on the right. It's not going to be very long. And that line segment will serve to be a radius for my compass. So now I can go under more tools. Here's my compass tool. And the first step is to choose a segment which will represent the radius. So I'm going to choose this over here, and then I can locate where I want my compass to go. So I'm going to put it over here at angle A. Now, after dropping that down there, the reason I wanted to have that compass there is I want to put a point here and here so that they are equidistant from point A on those adjacent sides. So now I'm going to choose my point tool. I'll drop a point here and here. So these 2 points I just dropped are equidistant from A. Now this picture may get a little cluttered looking, so I can hide my original circle. I don't want to delete it because the points sitting there will delete also. So I want to just hide it. And now I can use my compass tool again. So I'm going to choose compass. I'm going to use that same radius segment over here, and I'm going to put my compass right at one of these adjacent side points that I created. And I want to do the same thing again, but I need to first click on this radius, and I'll put another one up here. These two circles intersect in two different places, angle A and out here. So this out here position is where I want to drop another point. Once I've located that point there, if I want to hide my two circles to declutter the page, if you will, I can hide my two circles. And then I can make a line segment from A to this point right here. Maybe I want to throw a label on that. I can make a line segment, go from A to B, and then I can start to measure angles here. So I'm going to use my angle tool. I'll choose one end of the angle, the vertex, and the other end of the angle, and I'll do the same on the other side. And you can see here that both angles are clearly the same, and if students manipulate this, the angles are always the same. So that's how we can create an angle bisector with the geometry component. So that's going to wrap up this video. Our next video is going to look at how we can transform geometric shapes using the geometry tool.